Good afternoon, everyone. So my name is Hazel Diaz. I'm the Global Chief Information Security Officer at BANCO Santander. And I'm very honored to be moderating this panel today about this hot topic, which is artificial intelligence. So, and also with fabulous speakers with me today that will help us to decipher the mysteries of artificial intelligence. A lot has been discussed and talked about artificial intelligence since the explosion of generative AI and large language models. But what is behind the AI? So what is the regulation, competitiveness? So a lot of aspects that we will go to discuss today. So let's start talking about competitiveness. So it's something that has been repeated through all of the sessions today. And AI is a key factor for that, right? So Cecilia, maybe we can discuss about this with you. So I know that you have been discussing a lot with the European Commission and so on. So let me introduce first Cecilia. So Cecilia is the Director General of Digital Europe. So she is an expert in technology and in particular disruptive technologies. As head of Europe's lead trading association for digital transforming industries, she is closely engaged in discussions with European political leaders on the implications of AI, including how to best regulate it. She is also a member of the European Commission's high-level expert group on AI. I have with me as well Uljan Sharka, so CEO of iGenius. So Uljan is at the forefront of these issues as a practitioner. So he is the founder of iGenius, which is one of Europe's most successful AI unicorns. He has also worked with both the United Nations and the World Economic Forum to help develop good principles on AI development. So thank you very much for joining me today. So let's discuss about the competitiveness topic. So I know that you have been discussing very frequently with the European Commissioners about this topic. So how do you see AI role and technology on this competitiveness for Europe?
So I would like to start by saying, if we look at the gap that has increased over the last 20 years in growth of GDP between EU and US, we're exactly more or less the same 20 years ago. And the question is, what is the major factor that has created this gap? And to me, it's quite visible that it's digitalization. It is really a change in how we do business. As soon as digitalization is hitting an economy or a sector, the speed of innovation accelerates like never before. And we started doing that within the sector. So we had huge consolidations within the tech sector over the crisis of 2008. But then, after that consolidation, we really saw how the knowledge on how to use technologies in other sectors, whether that is in manufacturing, or it's pharma, or it's banking, the use of data accelerated the innovation cycles. I mean, just to be very concrete, for example, now we see in Ukraine that the defense technologies, the dual-use technologies, the innovation cycles is between 2 and 6 weeks. Our procurement system in defense, from we start having a procurement thought to we actually have a product in the market, takes 18 years. So we have the whole innovation cycle of technology is basically disrupting the speed and demanding scale. So one thing we do not have in Europe is scale. We do everything country by country, whether we regulate, invest, whether we are trying to manage regulation or putting reports on businesses. And that is actually what's going on right now, that we are losing competitiveness because we're not understanding that the economy has been accelerated. So the winning companies are the ones that knows how to compete on speed, on scale, on simplicity, and scale across a large amount of countries. And that's where we really, really struggle. And that would put a demand on Europe to act in a different way. So we just published a study on critical technologies, out of the 8 critical technologies, so critical technologies are the ones that are defining not only for economic stability, but also for military and societal stability in general. And US started working with these around 20 years ago, and so did China. We just defined ours in Europe 1.5 years ago. And they are, of course, like connectivity, artificial intelligence, energy and green tech, quantum computing, et cetera, et cetera. In these 8 technologies, Europe leads in 1. And that's connectivity. But we are the least connected and the ones who are investing least in connectivity and deploying the least 5G in the world. On green tech, on solar panel, we lost it. We know that 80% of energy will actually come from Chinese solar panels in the future. And we just sold the last factory of doing the liquids for the solar panels in Germany, I think 2.5 years ago. So it means that we haven't really understood that innovation is amazing, amazing. We're super good at innovating. Research and development in universities and all this stuff, we know how to do it, but we don't earn money on these innovations. Typically, we invent it, it becomes maybe like a medium-sized company, and then either it's sold or somebody else adopts the innovations that we're doing. And even for the mature area of green tech and energy tech, where we have been like world leading right now because of the IRA and huge investments in the US, monies are really flowing out, investments are flowing out towards the US. So it really is a fundamental shift on how we need to act with financial funding instruments. And I would say we asked all the companies that we were interviewing in this study, I really urge you to read it, it's called the Critical Technology Gap. We asked them what works, and they said, Europe is too complex. We need simplicity. We need to look at how do we use common tax incentives on critical technology investments across Europe. With that, we understand that. We know how that we will get money on the bottom line of our profits right away, and not some kind of project on a report that will tell us that in the future there will be something in 5 years. So it really has put a huge pressure on the European way of thinking in national small islands of investment and funding, putting a huge pressure onto that way of thinking. And we really need to change it. And everything is in the letter report, so read it if you haven't done it already. It's absolutely excellent. Draghi built on top of that with the competitiveness with other countries. But we are lacking quite significantly behind. And just one last number, 8% of the companies in Europe has adopted AI, 30% in the US, and 50% in China. So speeding up the adoption and use of AI is absolutely crucial to our competitiveness.
Yeah. Indeed, Cecilia. So, Uljan, I know your company, you are helping your customers in order to scale up efficiencies by adopting AI. So what are the opportunities you see for the European economy much more broadly?
Thank you. I will start with a personal insight. We have been spending the past 8 years to build what we call AI models made in Europe. It took us 7 years to get to a unicorn valuation. Mm-hmm. And if we look at our most recent peer in the industry in the US, it took them 7 days. So they basically incorporated as a unicorn. So if I have to think about that and the reason why, one word comes into my mind: access to capital. The reasons beyond that and the opportunities that come with building in Europe, I think are a bit different from what we have been discussing this morning, especially around the regulation. So I wanted to share some perspective on that. So the AI revolution is actually a social revolution more than it is a technological revolution. This brings us back as much as more than 500 years ago when the press revolution happened. And if you look at the fundamentals of AI, I would say that it really touches on language and culture. And talking about experience, and talking about what we discussed this morning, so when we launched our business in the US, we thought, oh my God, it's going to be amazing, easier than Europe, we won't have the language problem, we won't have the culture problem. And we started establishing in different states, hiring people. At the beginning, we thought we just needed one legal entity, and then we started getting, letters, and every state wanted their own, I would say, legal name. They all have their own taxation rates, and they all require a different reporting system. So we started asking ourselves how it is that US is being presented differently than Europe when it has the same challenges. I mean, here it's not different to establish operations in 3 states than it is in doing it in Italy, France, Switzerland, or Spain. The only answer to that is language and culture. And there is a third magic component, the way the US implements software. Software has eaten the world. Software is the operating system of the world. And unfortunately, Europe has a problem with 3 of these. We have outsourced software, so we do not control our own operating system. We have fragmented languages, and of course, we have different cultures, which is what makes us unique, by the way. Now, the problem with Europe is that we're trying to challenge those 3 components instead of embracing those as a competitive advantage. We have been trying to copy-paste the strategy of other ecosystems, such as Silicon Valley, and this is why we believe, after 8 years in building in Europe, why Europe has failed over the past 20 years. When we stepped up is when we changed our perspective, when we started embracing regulation as a competitive advantage, embracing the European DNA as a unique, different way of building AI. This is not about competing and building a better system than the US or than China. It is actually by embracing our DNA and that by transferring the values that we have in other industries and combining those with AI, that we can actually solve the challenges that come with the opportunity of AI. And I think this is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity for Europe, because the challenges that I mentioned before, the operating system of the region, which is about software and AI, engineering language, so we could achieve a single digital market much faster with AI because we can translate the cultural complexity. We can have everyone talking to their own language while yet achieving consensus and a single market that, because of AI, can actually operate and function more seamlessly. And of course, embrace culture and diversity, which makes AI smarter and better, more fair, more inclusive. So I'm very positive about the competitive advantage of Europe. I just think we have to have a longer-term view. If we look at the past revolutions in the 80s or the 2000s, it took 20 years to establish leadership in these markets. We are at the very beginning. Unfortunately, we are living a reality distortion. Everyone is telling us, that AI is going to destroy jobs. It will somehow be autonomous into potentially harming us. But if you think about Gen AI models today, for example, like ChatGPT or those that we build, the simplest way to think about the model is a text file where you copy-paste more than 1 trillion words that are interconnected by a sophisticated algorithm that, based on the questions that you make, words, connects those words and brings up an answer, a result. This is the simplest technology we have ever built, yet sophisticated. But it is far from being an autonomous technology. It is far from disrupting jobs at scale. It is actually just a tool that we can implement as we want. And one last insight I wanted to share is how we think at iGenius this is going to be useful to the world and not just to Europe over the next 5 years. We usually say that the future is too old. We don't plan too ahead in the future because the speed of change will actually disrupt you in the meanwhile. So in order to actually embrace AI, we need to start from the real problems. We need to start from the digital divide, from the skills gap, and we need to start from very pragmatic KPIs, such as, for example, the lost productivity that we have because of the bad quality of software and the bad quality of data. Unfortunately, that number is not being measured in Europe, but in the US, there is a consortium that is taking care of serving the economy to understand what is that impact. And last year, it was estimated that the United States lost more than $2 trillion in lost productivity because of the bad quality of data and the bad quality of software. So the gap that we have into making technology more democratized, more inclusive, and enabling it at par for everyone is still huge. So this is what I see in the next 5 years for Europe. The ability to embrace AI as a tool to maximize and amplify the potential of its industrial leadership and to actually plan differently for the next 20 years into first building something that embraces its unique DNA and that innovates its internal market before competing with others. Let's remember that we have a huge internal market, and if we just tap into our internal market, not only we can build big tech companies that are over €1 trillion in market capitalization over the next 20 years, but we can also maximize and unify our capital markets because we can turn every European company into a tech company.
Let's talk about the other side of the coin. So where do you see Europe has a competitive advantage actually compared to other regions, and how we can leverage that to boost innovation?
I think that's exactly your vision for how we can turn it into an advantage. But I think the general before said, sometimes we need to not live on a vision, but the situation that we have at hand. And the situation is right now that technologies are boosting the innovation cycle, and the companies that we have in nearly in all sectors, I would say, maybe not banking, it's a bit more difficult to enter the banking sector than it is in other sectors, but if we look at manufacturing, if we look at green tech, the innovations that of the future really depends on generative AI models, etc. And it also means that those sectors where we are leading today will somehow be accelerated in consolidation and disruption, and it will go faster. And then you can say, yeah, but why didn't they open data before? Why didn't they use data before? Well, we are where we are, and we chose by opening data by regulation. But it doesn't speed up the innovativeness of a company necessarily that you open up their data. Maybe it speeds up innovative initiatives of other companies that might not be European also. So it is a cycle that is unstoppable of disruption. Does it mean that we cannot win in some of the areas? No, but it does mean that we need to have different tools, different policy tools within Europe and within a single market that is non-existing. I scaled 2 companies and I didn't do it in the internal market. I'm sorry, I did it outside. So we need other tools such as tax incentives, large-scale procurement programs, not national, not redistribution of funds country by country, but in larger units. Maybe dedicating 25% of funding or procurement to smaller companies, so there is direct contracting, rapid procurement methods, as NATO is doing right now, trying to collapse 8 years to 1 year, and they will still on technologies that might even be too slow. So there are really a moment in history where we need to look at our original, very vision-driven, value-driven policy initiatives and say, like, they're not working anymore. The world is now different. How can we not talk about who has the mandate to do tax incentives and what is the right medicine for the problem that we have? And I hope that when we see Ursula von der Leyen, I think she's just right on track. I'm a big fan and a big believer. But she needs also to convince the member states to not always do their own thing, but to collaborate with the right tools. And sometimes that will be membership mandate and agreement on that. How can we, what are the sectors where we can turn this into an advantage? Well, of course, you know better than anybody how you use this in banking for fraud detection, smarter services towards the client, detection of cyber attacks. There are many, many things that we use this for. If you look at other sectors, we can now, with use of AI, recognize cancer before any human eye can. We can basically detect it before it is not even cancer yet. We can see companies like Philips, who has done like a cardio monitoring system that can tell you way before you get a heart attack or even that you have something coming on the way, helping patients today. So there are huge innovations. Our issue is not innovation. Our companies are brilliant. I just visited Danfoss, who does heat pumps. super efficient distribution of power and electricity, using electricity, but it is, do we have the scale? Do we actually have a market and the capital to scale so we become the winner worldwide? In Europe, we have not created, in the last 50 years, one company over 100 billion euros. If you look in US, they have created 7 over 1 trillion. So those facts shows us that there is something wrong with the scaling and financing. Access to risk-willing capital, scale, and scale of market are the two missing links that we haven't really cracked the nut on. We can't keep on innovating in universities and take for granted that they are adopted and scaled in European companies.
Wolfgang, where do you see the most successful adoption of AI? So apart from the financial sector, in other industries, where are you seeing that?
Financial services for us is first priority today. We tested many industries throughout the years, and that was the main sweet spot because of the opportunity to democratize information and to leverage the gold mine of data that each bank is possessing. But we see advanced manufacturing and government that are two other regulated areas where AI will make a difference, especially in advanced manufacturing with the acceleration of the scientific process, so being able to actually simulate faster and to increase the returns on R&D and to shorten those timelines, so such as, for example, building new materials or drugs in the case of pharma and healthcare companies. So in government, we see a huge opportunity to add high-tech skills to what are high-touch functions. So those roles that have been performed exclusively by people now can actually not be automated, but be actually made more sophisticated, more scalable, and with high-tech actually enable people to augment their potential to provide a better citizen and customer service more broadly.
Interesting. So let's move to the second most discussed topic today, regulation. So regulation and AI, so there are two key hot topics, right? So AI Act is a reality, entering into force in August 2024 in Europe. So, and we are seeing how other jurisdictions are regulating and having different totally approaches to AI. So, and as well from an organization perspective, so all of the industries are struggling how to be compliant with AI, but with at the same time, don't lose a competitive advantage of embracing the technology. So what's your view from Digital Europe's perspective? I know that you're having a lot of discussions with the policymakers, so what's your view on that?
I mean, honestly, our view from the start of the AI Act is let's look at areas that are real harm. I mean, normally harm comes from malicious stakeholders, not industry, first of all. So somebody who is intentionally want to hurt, and it's very, very seldom that you get a company saying, I'm intentionally trying to hurt my clients or citizens. So our opinion from the start was, let's look at how we can put criteria in public procurement, a code of conduct, something like this. It ended up like a big piece of legislation. We managed to get some good things in there. But right now, we are actually looking at how can we make sure that the interpretation does not spread for unnecessary areas. Let me mention you just an example. Your electronic toothbrush or your electronic vacuum cleaner is actually under high risk because it's under the safety regulation and it can cause you physical harm. I mean, my vacuum cleaner, at best it would just stop or go in the wrong direction. So there are really right now a huge job to clean up unintentional consequences on AI regulation. We already have safety regulations for devices like that. We don't need extra regulation for these type of devices. We have that for, I just mentioned something that is easy to understand, but we actually have that sector by sector. We have unintentional consequences coming from these type. And if you look at a small company, 50 employees, it will cost them, not in like direct, indirect costs, so not lost revenue or that you need to hire a lawyer instead of an innovator, but direct cost set at a fee rate that is super, super low. If you can get an AI specialist for that, please do. I think it was 32 euros an hour. you will have a cost around 300,000 euro for a company of 50 employees. So, and this is not my numbers, this was the numbers done by the Commission at that time. So you imagine the amount of cost and regulation coming from the AI Act, the Data Act, the Open Data Act, the next one, the CRA, which is on cybersecurity. And right now, what we are working on is really to see how can we minimize the spread of interpretation on these unintended consequences, and how can we make sure that we don't get extra reporting burdens. And we're publishing in 3 weeks, also really based on Enrico Letta's different categories on how we can cut burden or regulation. And we are coming out with 100 areas where we see directly we can use we can cut the regulatory burden of companies, because it's a huge, it's actually, I was looking at Anna Botin, she said that we would have, I think she said 11 million more jobs, and we would have a growth of 300 billion more. The amount of burden on industry right now amounting from regulatory burden is 200 billion. So at least we would only have a lack of growth that would be 100 billion if we actually managed to get that burden down. Maybe we won't get to a zero, but maybe just cutting in half, we have 100 extra billion in real growth funding in companies that they can use for hiring super cool, innovative, or to hire you to make their business more efficient than having to hire a lawyer or an accountant to do their papers of nitty-gritty reporting. So there is a huge potential in this. It's very high on the agenda, but you know how it tends to be. If you take a bunch of regulators and you move them into a room, what they do is regulation. But I do know that Ursula von der Leyen has sent a very clear message to the services saying, bring me concrete areas where I can cut burden. And of course, now we are in a banking environment. I really urge you to come up, and we are already doing that with Banco Santander and the other banks, how we can cut the burden also on reporting and unnecessary consequences from the banking industry, and there will be a lot.
Uljan, I know that you have a very disruptive view on that, as you see regulation as a competitive advantage for Europe. So can you explain that more, please?
So one of the most important challenges with AI is going to be trust, building trust into removing hallucinations from these models, but also control, because we cannot have a future where a dozen companies control the world's knowledge, and everything that we transact on every interface is actually filtered by a few private companies. So I think that regulation is a competitive advantage for Europe, because it is going to enable Europe to build the most trusted AI globally on one side. On the other side, if we look closer at the AI Act, it is saying 3 things. Don't build weapons, don't violate human rights, and don't create systemic risk. As an AI company, these 3 guidelines are extremely reasonable to us, and we do not see another way other than building AI based on those principles. So it depends on the regulation. Now, I'm not an expert of regulation in the financial services sector, so I don't want to oversimplify things, but when it comes, it has been absolutely overestimated in terms of impact, and I think it is a competitive advantage because we should not negotiate on human rights. It's obvious that we are in front of a choice right now. Should we press more on innovation and get faster innovation and negotiate human rights, or preserve human rights and have slower innovation? I'll be more for the latter, because I think it took us hundreds of years, to establish the rule of law as we enjoy today. It took us hundreds of years to have this level of well-being in society, and destroying it for a technology that is not even yet mature at the level that everyone is presenting it, I think that's not worth. And I'm proud of how Europe is regulating it, actually.
So but I think we need to be a little bit, we're doing it black and white here. Of course, nobody wants to build a weapon, and there are some banned areas that are very, very fair. But if you dive into the details of it, it is regulating, I mean, whether you have the AI Act or not, it's still illegal to violate human rights. Whether you have the AI Act or not, it's still illegal to have a bias that will harm or discriminate. All these laws are in place, we have them. So just to be sure that it is not the AI Act that is regulating that. They are just building, it's a given before that. And there are really some areas that is in the banned areas, but if you look at the high-risk areas, it has a long range of unintended consequences on non-dangerous, non-weaponized products. And that's exactly what we are looking at now. So we need to be a little bit more detailed here, and I think it will not be a competitive advantage. We have seen, we only have 6% of the world's venture capital for good reasons, scale and other things. And we have seen that due to the GDPR, which was very timely, very good regulation, it did not make us more competitive. So we need to stop saying, if we just do the right thing all the time, and we write everything on paper, and we put burdens on the companies, we will be more successful in business. There is a thin line between creating value and sustaining values, but we do have regulations that safeguards human rights. It's illegal to harm people. We have safety regulations. So I think what we didn't manage to do is to find that, strike that balance. And for us, it's very important now to look at these high-risk categories and make sure that the unintended consequences on non-dangerous products, on products that are already regulated through a range of other regulations that we have. We are extremely well regulated in Europe, that we do not have the financial reporting burdens and implementation burdens of that, because that will benefit no one. It will definitely not make us more competitive.
Yeah. Cecilia and Uljan, so I would love to continue the conversations for hours, but unfortunately we're out of time. So I think that it has been clear that AI will be a key factor in talking about growth of Europe. So, and as well, that this has challenges that we need to face and we need to deal with. So good luck with the work you are doing with the policymakers and best shaping the future on AI. And thank you for joining us today. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you. Oops.